MMA is a brutal martial art, where injuries occur from time to time, and also beatdowns it comes to a normal thing. Some fighters can take enormous damage and still stand on their feet. But are there steroids? What makes them different? Is this the chin, the ability to go forward all the time, the power of their brain? Nobody knows, but there are people who were so brutally beaten inside the octagon. That's the reason why we look back at the biggest MMA beatdowns. An MMA fight without blood or cuts is not a good match. Also, if you like to watch people getting battered, mixed martial arts are the world-class choice for you. Welcome to our list of the biggest MMA beatdowns. Number 6. Brad Morris vs. Cain Velasquez, UFC 83. Cain Velasquez is one of the most dominant fighters in the history of UFC. His ground and pound strikes are so dangerous, and believe me, you don't want this guy on the top of you. The two had a great match at UFC 83 on April 1928. Believe me, nobody knows how many punches Morris received. Cain took him down almost instantly and taught him a lesson in a very brutal way. The match was stopped after only 2:10 in the first round. I bet it was over 100 punches, and Steve Mazzagatti should stop the onslaught much earlier. Yeah, the controversial Steve Mazzagatti. This was one of the bloodiest and biggest MMA beatdowns in the history. Number 5. Kazushi Sakuraba vs. Ricardo Arona. Pride Critical Countdown 25. Kazushi Sakuraba is 49 years old and he still fights. He's one of the MMA warriors who has never turned back to fighting. His career started in 1996 when he was defeated to Kimo Leopoldo via arm triangle choke. Since then, he had 46 fights. The Gracie Killer earned a score of 26 wins, 17 losses, 1 draw, and 2 no contests. He got this nickname since he is the only man who defeated 3 Gracie brothers, Ryan, Renzo, and Royler. But Royce Gracie avenged all the losses. Gracie Hunter fought grappling champion Ricardo Arona at Pride Critical Countdown 25 at June 26, 25. It was one of the biggest MMA beatdowns ever, as Ricardo was a much larger man in size, but Kazushi Sakuraba has never cared about the weight difference. Arona dominated most of the game. He was better in Sakuraba's head with knees and kicks most of the time. The fight was stopped at the end of the second round, and Arona won via TKO, corner stoppage. By the end of the match, Kazushi's face was almost completely covered in blood. But I have one question. What the damn is this Japanese legend made of? Number 4. Cain Velasquez vs. Brock Lesnar, UFC 121. Oh man, I love this fight so much. Brock Lesnar was the dominant champion, but he was only taking his opponents down to the ground. He faced Cardio Cain at UFC 121 on October 23, 2010, but he realized Velasquez is a better fighter than he thought. Brock could not take the fight to the ground. Cain was more superior in almost all segments of the game. Even when the match was on the floor, the Mexican was on the top and raining punches over and over. Lesnar's face was completely covered in blood. And the referee should stop this one a lot earlier. I mean, it was among the biggest MMA beatdowns in the history of the sport, and the fight was stopped in the first round. Number 3. Forrest Betts vs. Sammy Morgan, UFC Fight Night 6. 2 fought on August 16, 26, UFC Fight Night 6, and this match is remembered for the score nobody has probably ever heard of. 30-27, 30-26, and 30-23. According to the judges' scorecards, Morgan was a punching bag. Betts was dropping Morgan frequently during the fight, yet he was unable to finish the match since his opponent recovered every single time. It was 4 or even 5 knockdowns if I remember well, and I'm unsure whether Sammy tripped himself once or received a hit. But only God knows how Sammy Morgan survived until the end of the fight, but he is today known as the guy who handled one of the biggest MMA beatdowns. Number 2. George St-Pierre vs. BJ Penn, UFC 94. The two battled for UFC welterweight on January 31, 29. The main event of UFC 94 was a highly anticipated match. Let's remember, the two already fought at UFC 58 on March 4, 26, where the French-Canadian superstar won via split decision. BJ Penn announced that he planned to fight until death this time. But this changed as soon as the match started, because George St-Pierre was punishing him so brutally during the 4 rounds. The prodigy landed non-significant strike. He didn't even rock GSP at least once. Penn was taken down and pounded for 4 rounds. George was dominating his stand-up too, and Penn's corner threw in the towel at the end of the 4th round, and St-Pierre won via TKO, corner stoppage. Nobody could deny this onslaught was one of the biggest MMA beatdowns. Penn even filed an appeal and asked the contest to be overturned. St-Pierre's coach was seen applying Vaseline to his body. He said George had an unfair advantage. Unfortunately for BJ Penn, his appeal was denied, and Rush received no punishment. Number 1. Mirko Cro Cop vs. Wanderlei Silva. Pride Conflict Absolute. Pride held an open-weight Grand Prix on September 10, 26. It meant anybody from any weight division could take part. Wanderlei Silva was one of the most serious candidates for the victory, but Mirko Cro Cop showed why weight classes exist. Silva weighed only around 92 kilograms, while Cro Cop was a heavyweight legend. It was one of the most one-sided battles ever seen and one of the biggest MMA beatdowns. The ex-murderer was trying to do and go so forward, but Mirko's legs were too much for him. The Croatian fighter was faster and more precise. Cro Cop dropped him with a great left straight punch and battered him on the ground heavily. 5 minutes after the beginning, Mirko delivered his spectacular left high kick and Silva ended up on the floor. His face was almost completely covered in blood, his nose was probably broken, and he looked like a real zombie. We hope you enjoyed our list of the biggest MMA beatdowns in history, and I'm also a big fan of Cain Velasquez. That is the reason I rewarded him with 2 honorable mentions. If you would like to add some other clash to the list, or if you like our content, please don't forget to rate and subscribe, and make sure you follow us at bestoplistbg.com.